Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Venom 3 have the absolute worst opening in the entire history of the franchise, missing the mark of the previous two films by a whopping 30%. I mean, we're talking about a massive drop-off in the amount of money being made. Apparently, from what I've been hearing at least, a drop-off in quality. Not that Venom 2 was all that much of a quality film either, but clearly there is still an audience of people that want to go see these movies. The big question is, will it be enough? Especially since it seems, at least, the domestic audience is just not showing up for this movie, as the vast majority of the money of its $175 million global opening came from the international markets, with the biggest chunk coming, of course, from the Communist Party in China. And so, of course, these are numbers going to impact the bottom line of the film, the future prospects of the movie. So even though this film could potentially make or hit its break-even point, what typically would be a break-even point for this movie, you have to always factor in the understanding that those international numbers are going to make its bar that it has to reach a lot higher, especially with the biggest portion of their international numbers coming from China, as they only get 25% of the returns there. The studio only getting 25% of the returns, whereas all other international markets are around 40%, with the domestic being a 55% take for those companies. And so that is the reason why Venom 3 right now is not looking very well as far as the future prospects. I do not think the film will make its money back, but hey, it is still quite early at this point in time, and so anything could potentially happen. All the while this is happening, we have Smile 2 dropping off quite a bit higher than I think we would have typically expected for a film like it. I've been hearing some pretty good things about it. Thought that the hold might be a little bit stronger. That being said, the drop off that it saw is not the worst thing in the world. We also had new releases like Conclave and some holdovers from previous weeks as well. So let's go ahead and dive straight into these numbers. Starting off, of course, over on thenumbers.com. And as you can see the story right here, by the way, starting off this video, as you can see, it's going to be in dark mode today. So please let me know your thoughts if you think dark mode is a bit better, or if you'd rather go back to the non-dark mode. I think it's a little bit easier to see some of the colors, and it's easier on the eyes as well. But Venom, The Last Dance, Venom 3 from Sony, $51 million, is the worst opening in the history of the Venom franchise, which dates back to 2018. In fact, I was able to pull up some numbers here just to give you an idea of just how bad this number is, especially in the domestic marketplace. The first Venom, which came back out in 2018, had an opening weekend of, adjusted for inflation, $97.9 million, which roughly estimates to be about 8.8 million tickets sold. Now, whereas Venom 2 actually was able to make a little bit more back in 2021 at $104 million when adjusted for inflation, it actually had a smaller amount of ticket sales because of the massive increase in ticket prices around the time of 2021. So it went from 8.8 million tickets to 8.6 million tickets. That all being said, we're talking about very, very small changes there, both in the overall box office and also in the ticket sales. We are seeing something very, very different today. Gone are the days of the pandemic. Keep in mind, right? Venom 2 would have come out around the time of pandemic, would have been dealing with the effects of the box office because of that, and yet was still able to have that kind of opening weekend. All the while, Venom 3, as not having that at all in 2024, let's just say, had an abysmal opening comparison, right? Only 3.9 million tickets estimated to have been sold in the domestic opening, with only $51 million being reported. This is a movie that when the initial tracking on the film started, many suspected, because of the success of the previous movies, right, getting in that $100 million territory in almost both cases, on average, we would say, right, on both of those films, on average, made $100 million each time. Venom 3 fell off quite a bit, right, making half of that amount of money, and overall ticket sales being quite a massive drop-off as well. If we round these things up, right, we're talking from 9 million tickets to maybe 8.5 million tickets to then 4 million tickets. So a massive drop-off, cutting in half the box office, but also those ticket sales. So 4 million less people going to see this film domestically. And so even though one could argue that those international numbers are something that are going to be something to praise about the movie and speak to the possible positive vibes towards the movie and the future prospects, yeah, this is not how you make money in the world today. Typically, just like we saw with Joker, when Joker had a abysmal opening weekend and then had massive drop-offs because the film wasn't very good. That film, even though it did have a pretty strong response internationally, or at least a lot stronger of a response internationally, so much so that the film, making so little here domestically, has actually been able to cross $200 million, by the way, for anyone still tracking the Joker film. It only did that because of those international numbers. That being said, those numbers do not bring as much back return on investment, and the fact remains this film film cost an estimated $120 million, and that still means you have to make probably over $300 million just to be able to break even, right? If we talk about a typical break even being between 2.5 to 3 times your budget, we're talking about it being in that $300-400 million territory. And with an opening like $175 million, it's on the table that that could happen. But if we also remember that why is it the break even now is a range of 2.5 to 3 and sometimes even higher than 3 times the budget, it's because of the question of where is it making the vast majority of its money. This film not making the money where it needs to, and ultimately domestically is in a pretty bad spot because of that very reason. Going back over to the chart on thenumbers.com, as you can see, Smile 2 dropping 59%. So not the worst of drop-offs that we've ever seen by any means, but this was also in the wake of a film like Terrifier 3, which was able to actually hold quite strong, much stronger than I think anyone would have thought about for a non-rated movie that was, inevitably meant to be much more front-loaded. In the case of this, though, we can see Terrifier 3 has continued to hold quite strong. Smile 2 dropping off quite a bit here. I guess it can't say I'm too surprised because it is more of a generic horror film from the likes of Paramount, whereas Terrifier 3 not only had that initial interest, but also was able to convince people after the fact with word of mouth. Smile 2, it seems, maybe had some of the people that liked the first Smile film show up opening weekend, and then some interest in the film has been piqued to keep it at least in the 50% range wise. So not the worst of drop-offs in the world. This film is set to make profit and to make a decent amount of profit to boot. But has not done profit yet as of the recording of this video based on the numbers that we currently have. We'll dive into those numbers in just a little bit. Conclave at $6.5 million came in probably about where many people had expected it. I saw some people have box office projections as high as $9 to $10 million even. Seemingly not being the case here. This movie is featuring a story about the church choosing a new pope, which apparently has a very, 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 very stupid twist at the very end that seems to be making a certain commentary, especially in regards to the Catholic Church, and it's enough for me to have no interest in seeing the movie. The trailer looks really good. The cast looks fantastic. The sad thing, of course, is that ending, which of course is based off of an initial book, which is why we know what the ending was even before the film came out, is one to where, especially in the current era of 2024 with the culture war or the cultural problems that we have right now in our country and in our world, it's definitely not something that is, if you're ever going to have someone make a decision to change something from the book, that seems like one that would be a pretty good idea, right? If instead just had a very interesting politically rigorous, involved process of going through what does a conclave look like, and then actually just have an ending that just is a bit more appropriate, is not nearly as left field as what the initial ending is, I think that actually would have been a good choice, especially financially, because they did not do that. Can't really suggest the movie for anybody. And again, I have no plans on seeing it either. The Wild Robot number 4 spot there from Universal, $6.5 million after 5 weeks of release. Still holding very, very strong. This film now officially in the chart-breaking category on my chart, and I think still has enough gas in the tank to be able to push its way to profitability. We Live in Time from A24 has added a lot more screens, over 1,900 screens, in fact, after 3 weeks of release, so it went up 15%, and that is the reason why, because now it is more widely available. Number 6 went to Terrifier 3, still holding on strong after 3 weeks of release, still out at several theaters. And this film dropping from only 42 of those theaters, so $4.7 million, bringing its total domestic to 44.5. This movie, seriously, is insane just how much money it's made. It was already in the 20 times its budget range, which is vastly more than almost any other film, especially any other billion-dollar film that we've had in the last several years. Just goes to show you how incredibly powerful this movie is as far as a box office juggernaut, especially when you are comparing its budget to its overall take, and remembering it's a non-rated movie, and that it went outside of the typical studio system just to get distributed is really cool to see. And I hope that we get more films outside of the horror genre being able to do something similar. It'd be really cool to have some indie, low-budget, sci-fi type movies, or even comedies be able to also do the same thing and be impactful and effective as well. Number 7 slot went to Beetlejuice, dropping 35% after 8 weeks, still hanging on pretty strong. A new film from Neon called Anora, not making a whole lot there. $25,000 per screen though is pretty good. So obviously a very small initial release for this movie from Neon. So that is something that is worth talking about, is that it clearly did well in the theaters that it was available in. But it's one of those things where, like, just like with A24's releases, usually when they've got these weird release schedules, it's hard to track. And so that's why I will not have Anora, or We Live in Time for that matter, really focused in any of my charting, because they're very, very difficult to track and make projections long term on. Piece by Piece, the Lego documentary, dropping 65%. Can't say I'm that surprised. It is still a documentary at the end of the day. Transformers 1 dropping 64% after 6 weeks of release. And so this film finally being abandoned by more theaters from Paramount. Film was so much better than it had any right to be, but obviously was not able to get people back. And again, I think the big person to blame there is, of course, none other than Michael Bay. I think his Transformers films were not only terrible objectively, but also have since driven a lot of people away from this franchise, which is sad, because Transformers 1 in many ways brings it back to initial form, and I think does the franchise a lot of justice and really sets up some very cool ideas and some very has a very solid ground to work with. I'll just say it that much. It's not in the top 10 this week, not to anyone's really surprise there, but Joker 2 dropping from over 1,600 screens, making only $600,000, not a 72% drop after 4 weeks, right? This film only getting to $57.8 million domestic. And as I mentioned, it got to $200+ million worldwide only because of those internationals somehow, for some reason, still showing up for that movie. Kind of wish they were catching up as quickly as the domestic box office was, because this film deserves to lose every penny for Warner Brothers and for everybody else involved. Let's go into the individual films here. As I mentioned with Venom: The Last Dance, $175 million global opening. We don't have the chart breakdown here of how it's done in every individual market, but it has released in the vast majority of markets it's going to get a release in, right? It's not releasing in Japan until All Saints Day, until November 1st. New Zealand, it has a late release. Poland, Russia, and South Africa, also Turkey. So nothing major there. Japan might have some money, but not a whole lot. Not really a type of movie that does incredibly well in Japan necessarily. I'd have to look into the other Venom films and how those films did there, but this film has made about as much money internationally as far as the markets are concerned. The big thing, though, of course, is the fact it's making the vast majority of that from China, and we've gotten this just because when they have the individual reports coming out, you can find them as far as what countries have made how much money. TheNumbers.com just does not update those numbers in real time as we wait for actuals to get posted. Smile 2, $83.7 million worldwide. Again, pretty good numbers there. It's going to cross $100 million pretty easily. Conclave 2024 only reporting $6.5 million as of the recording of this video. The poster looks interesting. Everything else about it looks so interesting. And if it has just been a courtroom-like drama featuring the church and what a conclave to elect a pope looks like, man, this would have been a film I would have been all over and could have been one of the best films of the year. But instead, if you just look up quick Google search on how does conclave end, you'll see why. It's just, again, as soon as you find that out, you think, wow, now I just have no interest. It's amazing how an ending can just change your entire perspective on everything else about a movie, especially with how it is marketed. The Wild Robot at $232 million, still holding very strong, as you can see, towards the top end of where most films with its opening tend to deal and tend to do historically. So very, very good numbers there. Obviously not as big as I would like them to be, but still strong enough to definitely be able to continue to chip away at what it needs to make back theatrically. We Live in Time at $12 million. Again, lower budget A24 release, so obviously take those numbers as they are. Terrifier 3, just impressive, no matter how you spin it, with just how little money this movie cost and how well it has done. Beetlejuice at $438 million. Anora at $2.2 million. And Transformers 1, $124 million. Let's go to the charts, because we love Chatsy on OMB Reviews, and we can make some projections on one of the films on the chart here with Smile 2. So Smile 2 now making $83.7 million after the first 2 weeks of release. We can project the film will make somewhere between $119 million and $167 million by the end of its run. Now, with dropping around 60%, seems like if those types of drops continue, we'll probably see this kind of go along the line of where most films in this range that have this total amount after 2 weeks end up, which is between 50 and 70% compared to their first 2 weeks. So at best, doubling what it has, at worst, the first 2 weeks accounting for essentially, more than 2/3 of the entire film, costing only $28 million to actually make the movie. It means the film is likely to make between $29 and $58 million in net profit. Taking into account this is using an older metric, we can probably assume that the total cost, or rather the total return on this movie, will probably be north of $25 million as far as net profits are concerned. So kudos to them for doing that. They are right on the cusp of breaking even based off of the numbers as they stand right now. $2 million, $2.4 million in the red. That likely will change in the very near future. We also, of course, have the new releases like Venom 3, making $175 million worldwide, but also remembering that $46 million of that has been made in China. That means right now it's $109 million in the red. Now, a movie like this typically needs to make around $300 million to break even, but as I said, because of where the film is and where it's making money, we probably look at this movie having to make between $350 and $400+ million to break even, and so it's definitely on the table. It's on the cards, right? If this is going to be your typical average release, which remember, most films make about a third of their entire box office in their opening weekend, that would put on the table, right? Because you take $175 million times 3, and you get to a number that seems like it would make its money back. The question mark is going to be is how well does it hold domestically? I don't think it'll hold very well because of what I've been hearing about it, but internationally, since we've already seen Joker perform much better, more so than it ever possibly should justifiably be able to do, $143 million is what that film has made. The fact that Venom 3 is already right $78 million without China, closer to $125 million with it, we can obviously see that this is going to be, Venom 3 is going to be a much higher return from those international markets as far as its overall total is concerned, and this film is going to easily pass that of Joker 2. And so, yeah, I would say profitability is still on the table for this movie, but it does have a way to go, especially if most of its money is going to only be made in China. And how that plays out, we'll continue to, of course, track here over on OMB Reviews. Now, as I've been mentioning, and some people don't like the fact that I continue to talk about The Wild Robot, it's a phenomenal movie, but because of where it is currently right now, let me just make sure all my numbers are up to date. Yeah, $232 million worldwide. It's only at $8.4 million in the red. As I've been saying now for quite a long time, this film, I do believe, still has a good chance of being able to hit a break-even point before it leaves theatrically. The fact that it still remains in discussion, it remains in the top 10. As we can see right here, it actually has remained in the top 5 over the past 5 weeks. It's starting to lose some theaters, and so this number will probably go down a little bit next week. But the fact that almost every week it's been dropping in the 20 to 30% range is very, very good. So I do think it has a good chance of being able to get that break even. And remember, it also hasn't released in Japan. It won't release in Japan until February of next year. So that's still a little too far out for me to give it really any, credibility as far as, oh yeah, well, just wait for Japan and then we'll say this movie is a win. No, I want to wait for the numbers themselves to actually get released, but we also cannot ignore the fact that this movie does not have to make a whole lot more to actually break even. So this film will do so, but also look at the first 2 weeks comparison. This film has already more than doubled what the first 2 weekends were. This shows us the film has had very, very strong holds, has been doing well in all the various markets, pretty good split there between domestic and international, and I suspect that this film will continue to be able to leg out, probably getting to $250+ million before Japan even becomes a part of the equation, and once it does, obviously, this film will make its money back. So a true chart breaker in the positive direction, of course, and also a film that is doing very well. So for the people hating on that movie for some reason and saying that I'm ludicrous for suggesting that it's going to make its money back, well, yeah. Charts don't lie, the numbers don't lie, and too bad for you, I guess. But those are the numbers currently as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that there is going to be some intrigue enough around Venom 3 to keep a hold on for another week? I don't think that's going to be the case. I could see this film, even though we are getting close to, of course, Halloween on Thursday, there is bound to be a lot of new releases coming out this coming weekend. Actually, we'll go ahead and do this live because we love doing things live here on OMB Reviews. Let's get the release schedule up here for a second just to see exactly what competition we can expect, even though, as you all know, I don't think competition does much of anything. So as far as films are concerned, it's got a wide release against Absolution, Here, Hit Pig, and My Dead Friend Zoe. Not a whole lot to be said. I think maybe the film Here is one that I have heard somewhat about, but this is a Tom Hanks, Robin Wright movie, so that's old people that's going to be going to see that. I don't think that's going to bring people out to go see it. Absolution, this looks like a drama film. Interesting there. Dysfunctional family. Probably not going to be a wide release there, or not going to be a big heavy hitter there. Hit Pig might be able to bring some people out for the kids, but seeing that Lily Singh is one of the voice actresses, no thank you. I have no desire to ever see that movie now that I know that. So really no competition at all for Venom 3 coming up next weekend. But that still being said, a film's got to be good in order to hold strong. A film's got to be good to be able to do good numbers, and as we can see right now, it's doing very well internationally, but domestically is a very different story. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you think Venom 3 will break even? I think there's a chance for it to happen. Obviously, after the first 2 weeks, we'll have a great idea of that case. As of right now, it's a very good start. only internationally, only worldwide numbers there, but domestically, as I've said, it's the worst release in the entire franchise by quite a bit, making less than half of what the first two films were able to do. So let me know your thoughts about that or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, a lot of that fire button over on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed Sunday, a blessed feast of Christ the King, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illich and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. And also to the K-Man. Check out his website, xtheboundaries.co. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.